Welcome to Roundtable Mindset, the podcast where we seek to understand and share different perspectives in order to grow and challenge our own. And we encourage you, our guest, to do the same.
Each week, we will pick a topic to discuss, sharing our own unique thoughts and insights. There will be times when we won't agree, and let's be real, that's probably going to be most of the time, and that's okay. We feel it's important to understand that we can live in this polarized world and still respect one another and even be friends.
Well, hello, and welcome back to Mind Table Round Set. I'm Jamie.
And this is Mahlon.
And we're here for another exciting episode. We always say it's exciting. Sometimes it's not exciting.
Jamie, honestly, I think you just read my brain because I was like, we always say exciting. And I was like, is there another adjective we could use?
Welcome back for another...
Stimulating?
No.
Instantly, she's like, no, that's not it. That's not the word.
Nope. It's going to be a great episode. We'll just leave it at that. So, how's your week been?
It's been a long week of trials, tribulations, bumps and bruises, but I'm here. I'm happy to be here, and it's only going to look up from this point.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, my week's been fantastic. Fantastic. How does that happen? Usually you're like, and I'm like, woohoo. It's always the opposite for some reason.
Well, I think that's just, I don't know. I was going to come up with something. I really don't know. I don't know why it always seems like we're on a teeter-totter where you're up and I'm down, or I'm up and you're down. But this week, apparently, that's the way it is.
Well, I guess it just means that we're not like going with a moon cycle or something like that. So it's fine.
I don't even know what that means. A moon cycle. What is that?
Yeah. Like, the gravitational pull is worse at certain points of the moon cycle or something. I don't have any idea. I'm not into like the whole like,
I was gonna say, Jamie, you might just want to say, I don't know. That was a bad use of words. Okay.
This is the age of Aquarius, okay? And it could have something to do with what's happening. I have no idea.
Oh, boy.
Way to start. Okay,
yes,
so
yes. Moving on.
If that didn't give you enough food for thought, Mahlon, do you have some more food for thought?
Yes, I do have some food for thought. So hang in there, everyone. I promise this will get better because it can't get any worse. Okay, so food for thought today. I do have something, and I don't want to be labeled as a pessimist, but it is a little bit on... I don't want to say the negative side because that gives a bad connotation to it, but it's not as upbeat as I would normally like to bring for food for thought. So here it is. And I'm just going to ask you a question, Jamie, and we can kind of unpack what this means and maybe where it came from this week. But the question is, have you ever dealt with someone who says they are giving 200% and it actually only ends up being about 10% of what you need?
I think I'd be lying if I said no. But tell me more. Like, because the question itself is not negative.
So where it came from probably is a little bit negative. And so what I'm talking about is we've been, I'll relate it to my children. So, we have chores around the house. There's activities that need to be done. Jobs that have to go get worked at. My daughter's taking a summer class. My son's starting his first, summer job. Like I said, chores around the house, things that, expectations. And during all of this, we ask for things to be done and completed. And we hear, I'm giving it all I can. And our thing in the house is, are you giving me 100%? Because, try to get 100%. And if you're giving me 100%, bump it up a little bit, right? Like do more than what you think you can do is basically the mantra. And I'm hearing, Dad, I'm giving you 200%. And it kind of dawned on me that I'm like, you say you're giving me 200%, but I'm only really seeing about 10% of what I need done from you. So that's where I'm saying it's kind of having a negative spin on it. But in reality, I think the question can be applied across a lot of different areas. When you stop and think about when you're asking to do something or having someone do something for you, and they're thinking they are, hitting the mark, giving you 200%, they're really burning the midnight oil, hitting all of the right notes. And in actuality, the person who's requesting it, in this case me, is only really getting 10% of their needs met. So there's a little bit of a misunderstanding or a misperspective of somebody's performance is actually hitting the mark. And it kind of just set me back just a minute to say, wow, I wonder how much that's happening where I'm thinking I'm giving 200% and the person that I'm working for is only getting about 10% of what they need. And would they ever say anything to me?
Mahlon, I love the reflection in that, just in that statement. Like, have I done this? Have I been in a space where I feel like I'm giving more than what the person who needs this from me is? I watched the TikTok. Just going to go back to the TikTok. You're always going to know it's from the TikTok. But I was watching a TikTok the other day, and it was like Brene Brown. Have you ever heard of Brene Brown?
I haven't.
She's incredible. I'll have to show you after this. I'll send you a video that maybe we'll post on I'll post it on the Facebook page. That's what I'll do. So you all can see it too. But Brene Brown, she's written a lot of books. She's a researcher, psychologist. She's amazing. Anyway, she had this video where she was like, everyone says marriage is 50-50, and that's total bullcrap. And she said, what it is there are days that I come home and I look at my husband and I say, I'm sorry, I've only got 20. And he says, that's okay. I've got 80. We can do this. And there are days that we come in and we're both like, I've only got 20. And he says, I only have 10. And we have to sit down and make a plan so that we treat each other with kindness and respect, even though we're both feeling in that space that we don't have the 50 to give or the amount to make up for what the other is lacking. And it kind of reminds me of your food for thought. Like, I think there are times when sometimes we've only got 20%. And if I'm giving you all of that 20%, I am giving you 100% of what I have to give. You know what I mean? And I think we all have a capacity for what we can handle at whatever time. And it isn't always that way. But I think it's always good to stop and think, okay, is this person, because let's be honest, it's usually my kids too, does my child have the capacity to give me more? Or are they giving me the best they have right now? And I consider that 100%, even though it's not maybe what I feel like I need or what I deserve or whatever. Does that make sense?
It does. And the one thing that your example has given me, which is, I think the secret to that is communication. If I apply this to my professional life, how many times has somebody disappointed me or, they say they're working at 200% and I'm getting that 10 or 20% from them thinking, what are you really doing? Because this is your output. But how many times do I go back to that person and have that communication and that conversation because it's uncomfortable? Like your example of the married couple, there's an intimacy that's already, interwoven into that relationship of marriage. At work, there is really none of that. I mean, you're supposed to be transparent. You're supposed to be able to communicate with people, but you don't have that same level of intimacy in that work relationship as you would in, say, a marriage. So for me, if I'm doing some more self-reflection, I would say I do not usually follow up with that person and have that conversation. I usually just say, well, you're not giving me what I need, and you're obviously not giving me 200%. I really haven't ever stopped to think, what if that is their 200%? And I'm discounting it because, yes, maybe my ask of them is too much. Maybe I'm asking them to do 2,000%. And they are doing 200%, but I'm never going to recognize it because I'm expecting 2,000. And no matter what they do, they're never going to be able to achieve that goal. So when I was thinking about this and all this, self-reflection, and I put myself in the person who's thinking, oh, I'm killing this. I'm giving, 110%, 200%. And the other person, are they recognizing that as such? Are they really getting out of me what I think I'm putting in? And then it just started unraveling from there. So I love your example. And I think the communication aspect of it is really the element that's missing from my professional life. And as I continue kind of having this roll around in my head. I think that's the piece that I'm going to hone in on.
I think, well, and I communication is definitely a huge piece of it, because not only that, but if I'm in a space where my 20% has to be 100%, because that's all I've got, I have to be able to communicate that to the person that I'm working with or that I'm partnering with for whatever it is, right? But I think the other element of that is just, is empathy, to say, okay, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've even been in that space where I've like, you know, I've got 100 things, I have 100 things going wrong for me. And I have to go to my boss and say, hey, today, can you not throw any new cases at me, or, you know, whatever, just because I need today. And to be able to communicate, to say, I don't have it in me today, and I need this space to do this other thing or to take care of something else. And so that communication is huge, but then to be able to have that empathy to even go there, because I don't know that I am always really good at thinking ahead that way, to think, you know, okay, this is what this person is giving me, and that's crap, because I need this, and this. So not only have I not communicated my expectations very well, probably, but then I also haven't taken the time to think, okay, why aren't they meeting that expectation? Is it because I haven't communicated, or is there something going on that maybe I need to ask about, and make some space for?
Well, and when you say empathy, I'm just going to be totally transparent with you. My empathy would not kick in, because I would never think in a million years, I need 200%, or I have these tasks. They tell me they're burning the midnight oil, they're doing 200%, but I'm only getting 10% or 20% output from them. I naturally would never have gone to the fact of saying, wow, they truly are giving me 200%. But maybe my ask is too great. Maybe my expectations are too much. Maybe I didn't communicate my expectations to them. Maybe they have 100 other things they're trying to work on and they're overwhelmed and they're not communicating that to me. So my empathy would never even trigger, because I automatically go to, I asked you for X, Y, and Z, and I'm getting little to no response from you. You're letting me down either on purpose or for whatever reason. So when you say empathy, even now, I'm like, my empathy trigger would never have clicked, because I'm almost thinking the worst because my expectations aren't being met. And I think that's a really, really dangerous mindset to have in any relationship. And so I am literally, light bulb moment is going on right now as we're talking, because I'm thinking, wow, I need to really take a step back and ask myself, if I'm asking people things and they're not delivering it, have I been clear enough? Is it a fair expectation that I have placed on other people? Have I had the channel of communications with them to say, is there anything else going on professionally or personally that's impacting you performing or you providing the things that I need? I mean, if I take those kind of steps, I could apply them personally and professionally, and that would be a profound change, I think, in my interactions with a lot of people as I'm sitting here thinking through a couple other scenarios.
Well, and that, honestly, I think that growth process for me really started with my kids, because, you know, and thank goodness, my daughter is a really great communicator. She really has this knack of being able to say, hey, I can't handle that, or this is too much, or she just has a way of putting up a mirror in front of my face to be like, hello. And so she really taught me that skill to say, you know, Mom, I can't do that today. Can we talk about it tomorrow? Or can we do, you know? And so I think that's where, because it's easy to have empathy with our kids and our family, right? So that, you know, that's really where it started for me, is to say, okay, my kid is telling me that they're giving me 200%. And if I stop and think about it for a second, maybe they are giving me 200%. It might look like 20%, but when they've got 10% and they're giving me twice that, I'm going to be grateful for that and just support them as I can. So.
Well, and one element that we haven't even touched on is then that may be an indicator of some additional, you know, training or education or something the other person is lacking, that maybe they're either too embarrassed or they don't even know that that's needed. And so, as I'm again sitting here talking, thinking about the personal relationships and the professional relationships, maybe that's a good indicator to say, you know what, maybe I need to follow up to make sure this person is equipped to be able to produce the things I'm expecting them to produce, be it a chore, a project, a file, whatever it is. Instead of just setting expectations and they're not meeting them, then just kind of, going to that dark place where it's like, well, they either can't, won't, or, they're not good at their job, or they're not listening to me, they're procrastinating, whatever it is. Maybe turn that around and just think, maybe this person needs a little help and they don't even know where to ask or what to ask, or they're embarrassed. And so maybe that's an indication of they need help. So rather than trying to, beat them down for them not producing what you expected them to produce, maybe this is a moment where you can come alongside and help and support that person.
For sure. Well, and that was what I was going to say is like, how often do I get stuck in those spaces where I don't even know what to ask for? Like, I don't know that I need to be seeking support, or even bigger, I don't know that I'm not meeting the expectation. That's usually what it is for me, is that I don't even know that I'm not meeting an expectation because that expectation was probably not communicated very well to me. So that's typically when I find myself in those spaces where I'm not measuring up the way I like to perform. It's usually because I wasn't clear on what the expectation is. So it's good, I think, to be able to put yourself in the other person's shoes and think, okay, did I communicate it well, or is there something else? That's been huge for me in this little arena, I guess.
Yeah. So when that happens to you and you're the person that, you're giving the 200%, but maybe it's only giving them 10 or 20% of what the person's asking of you, how do you rectify that? How do you go and start correcting that?
I try and check in. I try and say, hey, is there anything more that I could be doing? Is there anything else you need from me? How else can I support you? Because that's kind of my role in my job. And so, usually I just ask for clarification. Like, what is it? Of course, I'm one of those people that often feel like I am not giving enough. And so, but that's just, I'm really hard on myself. So usually I'm like, oh, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z also because I want to not ever feel like someone wasn't pleased with my effort. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. I think even when you just said that, though, again, the answer that I'm picking up on is communication, right? You circle back around, you reassess, you're saying, hey, this is what I've done so far. Is this kind of falling in line with what you were expecting? I think the biggest thing, and I've had to do this a couple times in my career, and it's very uncomfortable until you start seeing the results that it actually brings forth, which is more collaboration, clarity, which is going to that person and just who gives you the tasks and who sets those expectations and say, I don't think I'm understanding what you're wanting from me. Can we sit down and just take maybe 10, 15 minutes? Here's what I heard you say. Is that what you want me to do? Is that what you're expecting of me? Like I said, I've done that a couple times in my profession. And the first time that I did it, I felt completely fish out of water. I felt like I was almost admitting to the person that I don't even know how to do my job. And after it was all said and done, the collaboration that came forth really opened my eyes to that. That wasn't a moment of defeat. That was a moment of triumph for me, because I course corrected the ship where I could have just sat back in that insecurity and just let the happen and fall apart and know that I probably wasn't going to meet their needs, and then that would have had a greater consequence. I actually was able to kind of change in the course of where this was heading, and and during all of that, I had a little bit of a growth moment for me to understand, there's something. Oh, I don't want to say powerful, but I'm going to. There's something powerful about being able to recognize when you have a weakness and how do you overcome that weakness. And I think that was a moment for me when I started going to the person saying, I'm not understanding this expectation that you're set before me. And I need you to clarify. Now, I think that's a lot. I look at my career now and I think, wow, I can do that so much more open and freely, because I understand that it's not going to the person saying, I don't know how to do my job, I'm embarrassed. It's saying, hey, I do know how to do my job, but with the request that you gave me, I don't understand what you're really looking for, and we need to get on the same page. And that has huge implications.
Well, and not only that, I think what I love about that too is that that opens up the door for communication, which means next time it doesn't have to be that way. You know, you start working with a team like that, you start working with people around you like that, and it opens up the door for that communication. It makes it safe to ask those questions and to come to that space and say, okay, I need some more support here. And it helps you know how to communicate your needs better. Because I think that's another thing that I've experienced too. I had a coworker once, and it was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I messed that up," and I'm like, "Oh no, we'll get this figured out. Like eventually, I will know how to communicate this to you, and you'll know what I mean when I say, and I'll know what you mean when you say. You know what I mean? It opens up that door so that you can be communicating on the same page and speaking the same language. It's awesome."
Yeah. And one last thing that I think this just triggered when I was hearing you talk about teammates. In IT, I work on a team, very close team that we're all kind of working on the same thing. But even when I relate this back to personal life and to kids, when you have that opportunity that you can go and talk to that person, other people are watching. How many other people are you now giving a good example of what you need to do if you don't understand expectations?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You get to affect the entire culture of your workplace that way. It's awesome.
Well, and even look at the kids. If you do that with one child, the other kids look at you and go, oh, okay, now I know how to kind of handle that. And so it kind of starts breaking down those barriers. But thanks, Jamie. I thought this was a good food for thought. Like I said, I was afraid that it was going to be a little bit negative, but I think it kind of turned out to be more of a positive. It's just an uncomfortable thing to start thinking about when, you might be the person that's giving your 200%, but it's only being recognized at 10%. That's a little uncomfortable. So I think that's where that lens was at.
I think you get in a tunnel vision too when you're in that situation and you're frustrated because the thing that I need is not being met, right? The expectation I have is not being met. And it's easy to get stuck in that space of what's affecting you. But when you can open it up about what's affecting the rest of the equation and start thinking about it through another person's lens, that's what perspective's all about, right?
Moving on to something that's probably is equally hard to talk about. Don't we have
weighted? It's a weighted subject.
Weighted subject, which comes from a listener as well, from a Christian belief. How do you? I'm trying to really word it correctly. As a Christian, how do you follow God's teachings, turning the other cheek, forgiveness, the sanctity of life, but also believe in the death penalty for criminals that do crimes that would warrant an eye for an eye, in this case, murder, and then they get sentenced to be put to death? So the listener that really gave us this topic was really talking about capital punishment as an example, I think, but really wanting to hone in on the struggle between Christian beliefs and maybe laws or policies that kind of go against that, but you kind of believe in both of them and that struggle that happens internally.
Yes. First of all, I don't know, I can't remember what listener it was that provided that question, but I love that they are thinking that way. Because to me, the question is, it's a question of perspective, right? I mean, you've got these two things that in one sense feel really diabolical, right? Like they don't go together, but in another sense, maybe they do. And so how do you justify that or balance that with your belief system? So I'm super curious, because that is your belief system, Mahlon, right? You are a Christian. You go to church every Sunday. You are seeking to follow the teachings in the Bible, and yet I'm sure you have an opinion about this specific topic, but this is something that bleeds over into other stuff. So where do you Where do you fall on it?
Yeah, so you're right. I am a Christian, and I
Sorry
believe.
if that was not something you wanted to share.
Oh no, just want to make sure I profess it myself because I am proud to be a Christian.
Okay.
So even though you called it out, I just wanted to take my own voice and say, yes, you are in fact correct. I am a Christian, and I follow the teachings of the Bible, at least the best of my abilities, the teachings of Jesus Christ, and it's an internal struggle. And what I'm really kind of excited about this topic and kind of showing a little bit is, I think for the longest time, I've had friends, acquaintances that maybe aren't as strong Christians, or they're not Christians. I had one friend in college who was an atheist, and I think time and time again we'd have conversations, and it's like, well, you just think you're perfect, and you just think that you're life's going to be easy, all these things. And it's like, being a Christian is, first of all, about having a struggle. And it's struggling constantly between the spiritual side of you and the flesh side of you. And this question really kind of hits right in the center for me, because my spiritual side wants to follow the teachings of God and Jesus and the Bible, but also the flesh part of me also thinks of, there needs to be retribution for things that people do wrong, and there's consequences to your actions. And so for me, I'm sitting here and I'm saying, I believe in, turning the other cheek. I believe in taking the higher ground. I believe in giving people forgiveness and trying not to be judgmental over people. But at the same time, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, if you do a crime such as murder, then if that's the punishment that you were received from the court of law, that is something that I am in favor of. I'm in favor of, you take a life, then I think a punishment that's equal to that should be you lose your life. And it's a struggle, because I constantly go back and forth and say, is that following the teachings that I want to follow? And so it's a struggle. And I love this question because it kind of highlights that and it kind of puts it out there, because I don't want people to think that it's just easy to say these words, because there is that struggle that we are, at least I'm going to put myself in there, that I'm constantly having.
Well, and this is a topic that we were given a long time ago. You and I have talked about this a couple of different times. We've, planned to record it a couple of different times, and circumstances have brought it to today. And I do think it's something it's something that's evolved for me over time too. I know there was a time in life where I was like, no, throw the book at them. They get what they deserve. And that has shifted for me over time. Cause I kind of fall on the side of, it's not my place. It's not my place. It is my place to sit in a jury, hear the evidence, and convict if it is beyond the shadow of a reasonable doubt, right? But is it really our place to decide to end a person's life? Or am I, as a flawed human, can I make the wrong choice? Can I hear the evidence wrong? Can I choose to convict when someone is actually innocent? And because of that, it leads me to err on the side of caution and say, I don't agree with the death penalty. I don't agree that should be the law of the land. And I'm all for punishment. I mean, if someone has taken someone else's life, I don't know that I would ever feel safe having them out on the streets again. But do we have to go to that extreme? So, and that, yeah, it's something that shifted over time for me.
Well, and for me, again, I feel like, what do you do? Do you just collect these individuals? I mean, when we say we punish them, is that just, prison forever? Because then you kind of start going down that life or that path of, is that really a life for them? And then I try to put myself, when I have this struggle internally, I try to put myself in the victim shoes, because thankfully, I've never had to experience this firsthand. But I try to put myself as much as I can in the shoes of maybe the families of a victim who was, was part of a murder, and I would to ask myself, what would I want of that individual? And instantly where I went to, Jamie, all the time is I would want them to be punished to the full extent, which would be to give up their life because they took a life of a loved one. Knowing that's not going to bring them back, know that it's not going to erase the hurt that's there. But there is some level of me that's like, that's what's needed in order for there to be justice. Having somebody, spend many, many years or even life in prison pales in comparison to what was taken from me if I was in that mindset. And so that's where I kind of struggle too, that it's like, it almost feels like there has to be some punishment that is equal to what was done. Otherwise, it's almost not a punishment. And I would love, I would love to be able to have somebody here that could be talking about that and be able to bring that perspective, genuinely to this conversation. But the best that I can come up with is if I was in those shoes, that's kind of what I would probably be looking for. And again, then it goes back to the other side of the equation, which is, but is that what we're supposed to be doing? Is that what I'm supposed to be wanting? Is to be able to make sure judgment gets passed, or is my job to really turn the other cheek and forgive that individual? And that would be extremely hard.
Well, and I think that's what it is for me, is that it's not my place to make that judgment. And if I'm following the Christian faith, that I think over and over again, the Bible discusses, judgment is mine, says the Lord, right? Like it's judge not lest ye be judged, right? I mean, there's all of those things that have kind of, I feel like kind of put me in my place to say, okay, not mine, right? That doesn't mean that our justice system isn't there to keep people safe. That's the whole point in the judicial system, is to make sure that, well, in that side of the judicial system, I guess, is to make sure that communities are safe. But I mean, interestingly, it's about 50-50 of states that have the death penalty and states that don't. And I think most states at this point reserve the death penalty for that most heinous crime of taking another person's life. And so there are states where they don't use capital punishment. So, I don't know. Like, I don't know what the population in their prisons look like, and how many people does that equal? How many does that add up to be? That would be something interesting to look into, to see how do those states that don't have that as an option, how do they handle that? And what does that look like for those prisoners and those families that have been a victim of such a crime?
Yeah, and I think if we can take, the death penalty out of the equation and think of this as maybe a little bit bigger, like when we have society and we have social norms, or even the laws of the land that contradict those Christian beliefs, it's really conflicting. Again, I'm going to put myself in there. It's really conflicting as a Christian, because you're trying to follow the ways, the laws of God that God have put out there. You're trying to follow Jesus. You're trying to be the best person you can be, but at the same time, we're also supposed to be holding up a certain level of standards, and we're also supposed to be set apart from the world as well. And so that's a big struggle too, is how do you show love and mercy to individuals when maybe they're part of something that you're not wanting to be part of. You don't want to be labeled as being part of that, but at the same time, you want to be able to reach out and show those individuals love, or show them compassion. And so that's another struggle. That's kind of like when you have all these different things that are socially acceptable or normal, and it goes against the Christian belief. You want to stand up for those beliefs because that's what you believe in. That's what you see as right. But how do you continue to try to build that bridge across and understand those individuals? I think that's the next layer, that if this was an onion and I want to take a step back, that would be the next thing that I want to kind of showcase and talk about, is there's that desire to have that respect and have that love and show compassion and say, hey, I love you as a person. That doesn't mean that I like what you're doing, or that doesn't mean I agree with what you're doing. But at the same time, I can still love you as a person, and we can have a relationship from that aspect of it. That's very difficult. And, I struggle myself kind of showing that balance, and how do I do one without the other? And I know I talked about it a couple episodes back. When I was younger, it was very black and white, and you would be in my life if you were just like me, or you were following the straight and narrow, but you did anything wrong, and I would basically just eradicate you from my life because that was wrong, and I don't want that in my life. And as I've gotten older, and again, I keep saying mature, hopefully, I'm seeing that there is a whole gray area. There's a lot of gray in the world. And so how can you build those relationships that you need, at the same time still uphold those religious beliefs that I have? And that's difficult.
Well, let me start by saying I'm super grateful that I was not cut out in the black and white phase, because I probably could have been. I mean, let's be real honest. I definitely made some choices that you didn't always approve of. So thank you for not making me. I'm glad I made the cut. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. But I'm personally, I'm kind of in a, not really sure how to describe this, so bear with me. I feel like I'm in a process at this stage in my life. I don't know. I hear the word deconstruction a lot, like deconstructing your faith, and I've kind of latched onto that idea because it feels like it's most accurate to where I'm at. So, just kind of looking at the influence that religion and church and things like that have had on me, and really just putting it under the microscope and seeing how it fits for me. So I can't say that I'm coming from a Christian point of view, and I can't say that I'm coming from an atheist point of view. I can tell you that I'm coming from a trying to figure it out kind of point of view. But I think back to, well, and quite frankly, I think part of the reason that I'm in that space is because I think back to high school. And do you remember those silly bracelets we got that said WWJD?
Oh yeah, what would Jesus do?
Right. I always kind of made a joke of it. What would Jamie do? But really, I wore a WWJD bracelet. It was my favorite. It was my favorite accessory, with my flannel shirt and Doc Martens. Okay, they were Doc Marten knockoffs, but you know what I mean. But I feel like that was kind of transformative for me, because I think we're supposed to be pretty black and white when we're younger. I think that's just how our brains are designed, is to be really black and white. It's yes or no, on or off, right or wrong, right? And I think that concept, that question, to stop and think, okay, what would Jesus do? And at the same time, learning about the way Jesus treated people made a huge impact on me, and really helped me to examine my reactions to things, examine my reactions to people. And that, quite frankly, now that we're talking about it, I haven't thought about this for a long time. So now that we're talking about it, though, that's really part of, I think, why I'm in this space with my own faith is, I see Christians who I respect, people who I know have a deep and abiding faith. And yet it feels so hurtful and hateful to different groups of people, or people who don't agree, or people who, whatever. And that's part of, I think for me, that's part of the first step is like to stop and be able to say, okay, how would Jesus treat this person? And am I doing that?
Well, and that's exactly the conflict that's is inside me, and I'm going to say I think most Christians, is that you want to, and I've heard this term before, hate the sin, love the sinner. Well, it's a little bit more complicated than that, because a lot of times, and even in today's society, and I mean, I think you can even go back to even the death penalty example that we started this conversation with, is, if you disagree with, or if, I don't believe in the death penalty, but you do, and you're a Christian, well, how could you have both of those, right? So therefore you're now a hypocrite, and you're intolerant if you don't believe that the lifestyle that I'm living is something that I should be living. And I've been called hateful. I think I've been called a bigot before. And what's really hard is it's how do you show people, hey, I still want to get to know you. I still want to show you love and compassion. I just can't condone, like, there's a certain part that I cannot say that the lifestyle or actions or things that you're doing is 100% correct, because it goes against some of the laws that God has given us. But that doesn't mean that there's not an opportunity to have a relationship. And even going back to, again, this example that we started with, it's like two viewpoints pulling on each other. And it's I want justice in the world, and I think you do a crime, you should pay for the punishment. And if that punishment happens to be the end of your life, so be it, because that's the punishment that goes along with the action that you did, because it was so horrendous. And at the same time, I'm also sitting here going, I have these principles and these laws and, Jesus' teachings that says turn the other cheek and give forgiveness. And so, if nothing else, if I can just show you in this conversation, and anybody that's listening to this later on, is it's not just as cut and dry for Christians. I think there's that internal struggle that's always there. And for me personally, I always am asking the questions, how do I show love and compassion to somebody that I disagree with, either the decisions they're making, the lifestyle they live? How do I not have them interpret that as hate, but rather I'm not going to agree with that, but that doesn't mean that we don't have to be at odds with one another. And that's something that, even before we started podcasting, Jamie, that is something that I've started kind of thinking about and saying, how do I achieve that? What does that look like? Going back to your example, what would Jesus do? Well, you read the Bible and you get the examples that Jesus has given us. At the same time, it's like, how do I apply that in today's society? Because, there's situations happening today that were never talked about. And so it's just a constant struggle. And if I can just say one more thing, and then I'll take a breath, is I just want people to see that struggle. I really do. I think for the longest time, I wanted to hide that, because I should be farther along in my faith, that I should already know how to do this. I've been a Christian a very long time, and this is something that I should have well defined, and I should be able to just do without even thinking. And the truth of the matter is, it's something every day I wake up with, and I struggle, and some days I do better than others. And as I'm getting older, I just want to, I don't want to highlight it, but I also don't want to hide it either. And I want to say, this is me, and this is the struggle that I'm in, and this is where I'm at, and these are my intentions, and I'm hoping that other people that hear me can relate. And maybe some of those people that called me a bigot, or say I'm two-faced or a hypocrite, they can start understanding that it's not just that easy for Christians to be able to say yes, no. It's not a light switch, and it's really something we're all working towards. We're never going to be perfect at it, but we're trying to get better. And
two things come to mind as I listen to you talk. And one of them, a very wise mentor once said, okay, she said it more than once. She said, if I have the question, somebody else probably has the question too. So I'm just going to ask, because somebody else is afraid to. And if you're struggling with that, I am confident that there's lots of other people who struggle with that too. So I love this conversation, because I think it's the thing, it's the thing that makes you human. And I think it's important to acknowledge that we don't have all the answers. It's important to acknowledge that I am not all knowing, and I'm not all powerful, and I'm not meant to be. And that at the end of the day, we're not meant to have all the answers. I also, the other thing that I thought of is, although I'm in the space of deconstruction, I have done a lot of learning, and I've done a lot of Bible studies, and I mean, a lot. And one of the things that came to mind as you were talking is that the way Jesus got people to follow him was not by pointing out constantly all the ways that they were failing. The way that he got people to follow him was a simple invitation. Follow me. You could either choose to do it or not. And I think it was his actions, and it was the way he treated people, and it was the way he talked to people that that spoke the loudest. You know what I mean? So I think something I heard you say is love the sinner, hate the sin. How do I show care and concern, but still not agree with X, Y, or Z, right? I think first, one step you could take is not tell the person about how much you disagree with their lifestyle or what they're doing that's wrong, and just offer an invitation, because truthfully, 99% of the time, for instance, I always go back to examples with my kids because they teach me so much. But most of the time, I'm like lecturing my children about something. And in the back of my head, there's something that tells me, Jamie, you have told them this 100 times. They already know that they need to put the dish in the dishwasher. So why are you lecturing them about putting the dishes in the dishwasher when you know they already know that that's the expectation? You've already told them this. My kids already knew. They already knew what I expected of them 99% of the time. And so most of the time, if you get into a closer relationship with someone who you may not agree with whatever, they're going to know. They don't need to hear you say it. That makes us feel better. You know what I mean? When I was lecturing my children about putting their dishes in the dishwasher, it was about me. It was nothing about them. It made me feel better. You know what I mean?
Oh, you mean yelling at the kids for doing their chores? I know exactly what you mean. Again, as we're talking transparency with food for thought, and we're going to go ahead and continue that theme into this conversation.
It's therapy.
Yeah. One of the things that I am starting to understand about myself, and I prayed a lot, and we have this podcast, and people are listening, and we're very thankful for people to listen. And it's, one of the things I kept asking myself is I want to touch on topics that I normally wouldn't want to approach because I'm either uncomfortable or it goes against, my religious beliefs, or it's just so foreign from my normal everyday life that I don't know what I would even contribute to it. And one of the things that keeps coming up in my mind as I'm, thinking about this and I'm praying is, how do you ever show individuals that are different from you love if you won't ever come to a place where you'll talk with them and you'll have civil conversation, or you might meet them in the middle to have the conversation, which is putting me in an uncomfortable situation. It might be putting them in an uncomfortable situation, but it keeps coming back over and over my head that if you're not willing to put yourself in that space, how do you expect to get out and reach individuals and have those conversations? And I don't have a good answer from that because truly the answer is, if I'm not willing to put myself in those spaces and have those conversations, the answer is I never will reach them. We'll never have that conversation. And then all of a sudden, all the biases and the prejudice that people, hear about other groups of individuals, Christians, non-Christians, atheists, whatever they are, you suddenly start painting those individuals with a broad brush. And we've talked about that before, about how you can't just use a broad brush to paint things. You have to really kind of look at things individually. And so I'm really excited for, the future conversations that we're going to have on here and the people that we're going to bring on, because, we're looking for people from all walks of life and in different cultures and environments and marriage statuses, and people that are in different types of relationships. And so I'm looking forward to have those conversations and have those individuals here, to learn and to kind of have those discussions that we're going to have with them. But also, I think all around that is also to maybe have those opportunities to show, hey, I don't really believe in X, Y, and Z, but that doesn't really matter, because I'm here trying to talk with you as a person, trying to love on you as a person, trying to show you compassion as a person. And I'm excited about that. And it's uncomfortable for me. But I guess the bottom line of that statement is, if I'm not willing to put myself in those situations to have those conversations, then I will never be able to reach anybody. I'll never be able to show people that I care about them as a person, regardless of the other things that we've talked about. And so this is a big step for me. And I say this not bragging. I say this as kind of telling myself this. These are the steps that I'm taking to, better myself, and is also to kind of make sure that people know that I care about them as a person, regardless of what their lifestyles or the choices that they're making. The younger version of me is screaming right now because, again, he saw things in black and white, and you did things a certain way. You were in my life. You did things I don't think, you were out of my life. And that is not the right way to live. And I don't want to carry that on into my adulthood or into, later years. And so I'm excited, but it is uncharted territory for me. So I just kind of want to recognize that and kind of let that be out in the air for just a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can tell you, Mahlon, I'm grateful for the work that I do. And I am grateful for the work that I do because it has helped me to see people in such a different way. I know if you were to talk to me 20 years ago, I can't even tell you all of the things that I had such strong opinions about. I was so confident that I knew what was right, and that my opinion was the only thing that was right. And, just in working with people, I've learned about a whole different side of things like immigration and race and LGBTQ thing, issues that come up with the LGBTQ community and things like that. And I'm so grateful for that, because I feel like that has been the key to my growth personally, is to be able to stop and listen to those stories and listen to those experiences. Helps me know that I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't have any understanding of what it's like to walk that path. And the only glimpse that I get is when I can stop and close my mouth long enough to open my ears and listen. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the experiences that I've had that have been able to do that for me. So I think, and quite frankly, I mean, if we're being super honest, not to go back to the first episode again and talk about all the things that we intend to do with this podcast, but I think that is such a big piece of what I was hoping for this platform, is to be able to say, okay, if I can just stop and hear from someone else's experience, can that shape what I believe and what I think and how I move forward in life? You know what I mean? And I think if, what encourages me so much about this conversation is just knowing the topics that we want to tackle. And, let me just encourage you. I feel like one of the things I hear over and over and over again, on all of these things that I'm reading and watching and learning about deconstruction is, Jesus was a radical. Jesus Jesus did things that no one else at the time did. And Jesus wouldn't have accepted, if he was following the traditions of the church that he was part of and the group that he was part of, he would not have had dinner with a tax collector. He would not have done most of the things that he did, because those people were not worthy of the time that he spent with them, and worthy of the care and ministry that he gave them. And so, at the end of the day, I'm hugely encouraged to hear you say that and to put that out there for everyone to hear, that you are in a space where, you want to hear those experiences and you want to grow from them. So thank you for talking about a really hard topic that I wasn't expecting to be such a hard topic, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. And again, to go back to the struggle that's within, in myself, is there's fundamental truths that we cannot change being Christians. And I think if we can, when those beliefs, those fundamental truths come to the point where the individual that I'm talking to doesn't share those, or it's in complete opposition of, their lifestyle or the choices they're making or whatever it is, that's where I want that human part, that relationship, to say, this is where you and I can still meet and talk and love each other and encourage one another. But again, there's fundamental truths that I can't change, because those are rooted in the gospel. And I think if I can get to a point where I can express that, yes, that's true. But that doesn't mean that we can't have a relationship, and we can't still build a bridge, and we can't still be respectful of one another and care for one another and, show forgiveness and kindness. That's my hope. That's my desire, is because for the longest time, I used those fundamental truths as a way of saying, as a measuring rod, as saying, you did not stack up to this, therefore you're gone, because you may be impacting my life. And one of the things that I've learned over the years is that that shouldn't be used in that way. It shouldn't be used as a measuring rod for myself or for other people. Yes, it is the truth, and that is the guiding principle. And if you ask me, I'll say everybody should be following these truths. But then the people that aren't, it's still my obligation to show them love and compassion and to encourage them. And that's where that struggle is coming from. And so I just kind of wanted to clarify that just a little bit, because I know the kind of conversations that we're planning for and the people that we're hoping to bring on. And again, I'm very excited for that, but I'm almost positive that something is going to be coming up in the future where we're going to have to talk through this and unpack it. And I just want to be clear here now, so when those situations happen, it's not because I'm trying to be two-faced, or I'm trying to talk out of both sides of my mouth. It's really, there are just truths that I cannot change. And when those truths are in opposition of other people, I want to learn, how do I continue to build a relationship rather than just kind of pushing people away. So
I have this amazing advantage of hindsight is 2020, right? Like I have this advantage with you where I get to see you from the time we were in third grade till now.
It was third grade.
Well, I mean, you have like black and white on paper evidence. How can I although I haven't seen it yet, I'll be honest, but I'm assuming that you are being honest with me. So we'll say third grade for all those in the back. But, I have this advantage of being able to see you as a person. And I hope you have seen me as a person grow from, all of those years of experiences. And so I want to acknowledge that you and I, man, we get into some of those conversations where I'm just like, ha 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 ha. But, I'll be honest, the reason that I'm willing to come back and have those conversations is because I know that you consider yourself a work in progress, and that you're still seeking to grow and change. And so, So I just want to acknowledge that growth that I've gotten to see over all of these years, and I hope you see it in me too. Some days it's better than others, but
well, since you're gonna passing around compliments, I will take a minute and say yes, you are absolutely correct. Like, I wasn't looking for a compliment, you made me feel uncomfortable, so now I'm gonna make you feel uncomfortable.
yeah,
Yes,
thanks.
looking back and seeing who we were as kids.
Yeah.
If we had a DeLorean, I think you would join me in going back in time and just to smack the crap out of our younger selves.
Oh, for sure.
But
For sure.
yeah, no, looking at you from who you were to who you've become, it's night and day difference. There's not that you were not a compassionate child, but there's definitely more care for other individuals now. And again, it's part of growing up, right? It's part of maturing. I think as a kid, the only perception you have is of yourself, because the world literally revolves around you. You don't know any different. But to see, in our friendship and our time that we've known each other, Jamie, to say that I haven't seen you grow would be, I mean, it's an understatement. And, where you're at in your faith or not, there's times when I look at what you say and what you do, and I'm like, you know what? I need to be a better Christian myself, because there's light that you shine on me that I'm like, I got to do some self-reflection, because I don't think I'm coming across the way I need to. And, what makes me keep coming back to these conversations and to this friendship is that challenge that I had mentioned before. And it's that challenge that we have with one another that you push on me. That's like, hey, let me self-reflect here. Let me kind of work through this. Sometimes I go, okay, yeah, and I compartmentalize it and move on. And there's sometimes that it really does kind of rattle around in my brain. And I know we've had conversations a few weeks back where I kind of called you and I was like, hey, what we talked about has been rattling. And so I want to just kind of express, what I've been thinking, and it's in those conversations too that I think has been really helpful, because insight comes from that. And I don't think I could have had that with the younger Jamie. So for that, I say thank you, because I think that is growth, and that is advancement. So.
Well, not to use another biblical reference, but I'm pretty sure somewhere in the Bible it talks about iron sharpens iron, right? And I have always, I think that's what I appreciate about our conversations and our friendship, is that, even if I don't agree with what you're saying, it does make me look a little deeper to say, okay, so how is this contradictory to what I said previously? And have I thought through this well enough? And, really examine why I believe what I believe. And that has been nothing but good for me. And, I am excited that we get to continue this journey of growth. I really hate that word. We need a different word. But I'm excited that we get to continue doing that together, and that we get to do it for all the world to see. Welcome to our master class in trying to figure crap out.
Right. Could we take just maybe, a minute as we're wrapping up this episode? Can we just give a little bit of an update of what we're kind of looking? Because I think we're hinting at some things, but we really haven't kind of given an update in a while. Do we want to talk about some of those things that we're working on bringing onto the future episodes?
Yeah, I think a couple of the episodes that I'm pretty excited about. I'm really excited to talk about. We have someone that we're working with to bring on to kind of talk about biases. I feel like that's going to be a really great place for us to start, is to be able to really name some of those things, and even just recognize how some of the thought processes and beliefs that we have are implicit biases that we may not even recognize yet. So I'm kind of excited about that. I know we're also planning to do some, just kind of talking about like our circle of influence, and, how we exercise or flex our control muscles, and how sometimes we might pour that energy into things that we really have no control over. And that can lead to frustration.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, often. what about those are kind of the two that I'm excited about, I guess.
Right. So we're also looking at bringing some, a female entrepreneur on, kind of talking about the mind shift that had to happen from going from somebody who had a steady job to suddenly having a family, small kids, starting up, 2, 3 businesses, kind of that mind shift that had to happen there. Because I think that's something perspective wise that it was really interesting to kind of understand. We're also working with an individual coming on from the transgender community to kind of talk to us about that community and kind of represent it. I know I'm looking forward to that one, as there's questions that I have to kind of maybe have up front in close personal conversations around that. So I'm looking forward to that as well. So we have just a lot of really great,
Ooh, one more. I just remembered. We're also working on bringing in a scientist to talk about science and religion, and kind of how those can reconcile or sometimes clash. So I'm kind of excited about that one too.
Oh, and one more. We're working with an individual outside of the United States, talking about toxic masculinity.
That's going to be fun.
Yeah,
I can't wait to have that conversation with you, man.
So yeah, those are just some highlights, some updates of things that we're working on. I know that we expressed that many episodes ago that we want other people to come on and bring their perspective and kind of share that. And so just wanted to give those those updates and those highlights to everyone, because it's really exciting, and I'm really looking forward to all of those conversations, not only to be able to unpack those topics with you, Jamie, but also bringing other individuals on that maybe have firsthand knowledge or experience in these things, and hearing from them and kind of seeing the world through their lens for just even that one moment, and that's going to be something that's really exciting for me.
I have to say, a lot of those topics have been inspired by you guys too. So one of the things we hear a lot in feedback is that people want to climb through the radio and get involved in the conversation with us.
Which we love, by the way. Like that is
it's our favorite.
That's like a common thread that we've been hearing, and we would love that. And it gives me goosebumps every time we talk about it.
We consider those jewels in the crown of podcasting. So, but I guess I just want you to know that we are listening, and we do want to interact, and we do want to give some of that content that you're asking for. And so, keep the ideas flowing, keep the feedback coming. We appreciate it. And, it really does. It not only encourages us to keep going, like that maybe we're doing something that's worthy and worthwhile, but it also keeps us on our toes and thinking outside the box. So I'm loving that piece of this.
Yeah, and one other plug that we can do is if you have some feedback on an episode that you've listened to, good, bad, or ugly, please provide it. I can't tell you the amount of feedback that we're getting that has been kind of uplifting even to us, because we hear people say, I hadn't thought about that before, or you really challenged, or I was really angry when you said that. And it gave me a moment to kind of talk through that. And we hear different people's perspective when they give us their feedback. And so I personally want to say to everybody, thank you for that, because it's been really inspiring at times, and it's also pushes and challenges our perspectives and gives us a little bit of a window into other individuals and what they're thinking. And so I just would keep encouraging people, if you listen to an episode and it moves you one way or the other, go ahead and give us that feedback. We really would appreciate that and enjoy reading through them.
Yes, and all the ways that you can interact with us can be found in our outro that we'll be following up here in a minute. But there's all kinds of places that you can provide feedback and interact with us. So we appreciate that too. So this has been this is not the way that I thought this episode was going to go, Mahlon.
I was just going to say this was surprising because I had no idea this is where. When we started this conversation for what was it, like the second or third time? I think it was the third time.
I don't even know.
I was not expecting it to go where it did, but I'm very thankful that it did. And I really liked the conversation, and it really kind of, it lets me put some of that out there and lets the steam out of the collar a little bit, because, and I think that's important.
Yeah, no, I This has been good. I've appreciated this. So yes, thank you for being transparent, Mahlon. Thanks for bringing your A game tonight, and thank you all for listening. And we'll see you next time on Roundtable Mindset.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. This podcast was recorded and edited by Jamie and Mahlon. Music by Famous Cats. If you have a topic you'd like us to discuss, please email us at roundtablemindset@gmail.com. Text or call us at 402-819-8999 or join the conversation on Facebook at Roundtable Mindset Podcast.
And never miss a new episode by making sure you like, subscribe, and share wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for being our guest today. See you next time at the Roundtable. And remember, your opinions and perspectives matter and are appreciated, but might not always be shared by others, and that's okay.